we're going to take a look at trends, is going to explain how to trade different types of market trends, or at least how you should be thinking. Now, the first thing you need to understand is there are three ways to describe the market as far as trends are concerned. And that is uptrend, meaning prices are rising over time. That is downtrend. And then there is such thing as a sideways market, sometimes called consolidation, where price simply goes back and forth, where buyers and sellers are consolidating the market, trying to figure out their next move. So uptrend, self-explanatory, prices rising over time. Downtrend, self-explanatory, and sideways. So those are the three states the market will be in. It can only be in one of those three states. Now, the biggest problem that most new traders have is that they do not know what time frame dictates what. Well, the reality is this. You go out into the forums, you go out into the websites, and they will talk about the uptrend, the downtrend. We're in an uptrend on the daily, but a downtrend on the weekly, a downtrend on the 4-hour chart, but an uptrend on the 15-minute chart. Generally speaking, the best way to go about finding the trend is to actually start with a high time frame, like daily or even weekly. Well, notice how there's a lot less information on this chart, and it's much easier to determine which direction the market is heading. Sellers are much more in control of Litecoin on the weekly chart. Yes, we had a bounce, but at the end of the day, you can see it was slight compared to what we had been seeing. We started at $150, dropped to $35, bounced to 84-ish, 85-ish, which sounded nice, but then rolled over again to continue this. So that is one way to look at it. And if you go back to the daily, it does tell you the same information. It's just with a lot more candlesticks. So pay attention to what price is doing over the longer term. You are looking to trade with the longer term trend. Yes, you can make a few bucks here and there. In Litecoin here, certainly you could have made money buying. But the reality is you are fighting the overall trend. So what typically is advisable is find out what the longer time frame is. And, this is even more obvious over here. Yes, there were times where we did rise a little bit, but look, it gained that much, but it lost that much to get there. So using a little common sense, you should be looking to sell. That doesn't necessarily mean you sell every time, but you have the weight of the market with you. And typically that means it gives you a little bit more room for error. Now, how do we define trend lines? Again, higher time frame, but one way you can look at it is trend lines. So you can go over here to the line submenu, and it's called trend line. And it is a line that shows where price was being supported or the buyers came in. And you can extend it out. So, for example, Litecoin this entire time was going higher. This trend line shows where buyers were willing to get involved. And even when we did finally break down through it, notice how we broke through it and bounced back above it, broke through it again, and then came back and it had a reaction. That is a trend line. That is the essence of defining the trend. There are other ways, but this is the simplest. Sometimes people like to trade channels, and you can click on parallel channel and you can draw, the same trend line, and then you drag it up. And what you're doing is you're looking for, in this case, you can see where we hit that, actually broke above it, hit it again, and gained back. So there was a little bit of a parallel channel here. Typically, it's not advisable to trade a parallel channel just simply because why are you trying to fight the overall trend? When you see a move like this, yes, it's overextended. but you have to know that there are people underneath that are willing to buy this. You can see that they never even broke down below the bottom of it, and parallel channel can work in either direction. You can have something like this and drag it up. You can make an argument for a little bit of a parallel channel, maybe not all the way back there, but starting right around here. Again, if you're going to use the parallel channel, you want to use this. You want to use the top. You don't want to use the bottom. The only time you use the bottom of the channel in a downtrend or the top of a channel in an uptrend is possibly taking profits and looking to sell either in the middle if you're aggressive or the top again. Again, though, parallel channels are pretty subjective. It's pretty rare you get a perfect one. So, but it is something that you will see on a lot of charts. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin has basically been falling since the peak in late 17. Now, we've had a nice, huge rally in June of 19, but we have clearly fallen since then. So one of the easiest ways to look at this is just to change it to like an area chart. You can see clearly we got a nice rally and then we continued the downtrend. So Bitcoin has been in a downtrend since the bubble peak right around 20,000. Now, obviously, there have been time frames or time periods, I should say, where things looked quite a bit better. And you certainly need to keep that in mind. But all things being equal, this is a pretty negative looking chart since the highs. So where have you made the most money? You've made the most money shorting. Unfortunately, a lot of retail traders make the mistake of thinking they need to catch every tick one way or the other. And that is a great way to lose your account because it's very easy to look at this chart. And I could show you an example right here. This is the Bitcoin weekly chart, very negative. And you look at the daily chart and you think, okay, well, it's a little better here. But what happens if you are somebody trying to scalp this chart on the 15-minute? It looks very neutral, right? You think, okay, well, I could have made all this money. But if you were just patient enough and wait for the longer term trend, it starts to look a lot different. And in fact, it looks as if it's trying to roll over here, even as positive as it looked when I first pulled it up. Hourly chart. See how negative this looks. This comes down to following longer term trends. I cannot stress that enough. Find out what the weekly trend is. You follow right along with it. Now, there are some ways to determine whether the trend is changing, and we'll look into that. We have a video coming up a few down the road that talks about exponential moving average. Quite often that's used to determine trend. And you just want to follow the longer term. You want to wait. If this is a downtrend, Bitcoin gets a little expensive, the sellers come back in. You need to be patient. Cannot stress that enough. In the next video, we'll talk about support and resistance levels.